Hi, and welcome to this session. My name is James Weaver, and I'm going to be talking about quantum music. Those of you that have seen my presentations have before know that I have a passion for incorporating music into any of the quantum and actually classical computing presentations that I give. And I'm just always looking for an opportunity to do that, to explore that passion in the context of quantum or classical computing. This will be no exception. Today, I'm going to kind of release and unveil for the first time in a presentation this facility that I've created called a quantum music playground. And if you can see the screen, these slides are at this link. And so you'll be able to dive into any of the resources that are on these slides. In a nutshell, what the Quantum Music Playground is, it's a plugin or a device that runs in a package called Ableton Live. Ableton Live is a digital audio workstation used for composing and producing music from any kinds of styles of music. Uh, you often see DJs using Ableton Live or a Push, Ableton Push, to DJ sessions and maybe EDM kind of sessions. But really, it's good for any kind of music that you want to compose. And so, what this is, Quantum Music Playground, is a playground for composing music using quantum states. So, I wanted to explore the idea of helping students get intuition for creating quantum states from quantum circuits. And again, it's implemented as a Max for Live device in Ableton Live 11. And in the implementation is a micro Qiskit quantum simulator that I built into it. And it is free and open source and Apache 2 license. And this link here at the bottom, the shortened link, then are the instructions and a nice tutorial, pretty exhaustive tutorial actually for leading your students through this, through using this to gain intuition in quantum states. So, well, first of all, here's a disclaimer side. It's one that IBM has us put up. It basically means that you shouldn't really trust anything that I have to say. And then a little bit about me. I'm a quantum developer advocate for IBM. I'm also, in a previous life, was a Java champion, still am, developer, author, and speaker. And there's my email address. I've written several books, mostly in Java and JavaFX and Raspberry Pi. The ones on the left are pretty much doorstops by now. The two on the right are actually current. One is a definitive guide to modern Java clients with JavaFX, and the other one is one that I'm currently writing. It's a Qiskit Pocket Guide, and it'll be out in early release soon with O'Reilly. Also, there's a little insignia up here. It's a badge that I'm a IBM Associate Certified Developer, which means that I and you can too, of course, passed the IBM Certified Qiskit Developer exam, and so I encourage you to reach out and take that. So the big idea, as I mentioned, is to ascertain one of many ways, actually, to hear a quantum state, to give students intuition about quantum states, and to create a device that could be used to compose music by manipulating a state vector or state vectors. So students of quantum computing would use it as a fun and musical way to gain intuition about state vectors. So you may recognize this image on the lower left. That's of the IBM Quantum Circuit Composer that I'll put right here. And to create circuits, you simply drag and drop gates onto the circuit. Here I'm going to do a very common pattern, which is to drag and drop Hadamard gates onto wires of the circuit. There are 4 wires in this circuit, and so as you probably know, there are then 16 basis states, 2 to the 4th power. And because I put Hadamard gates, which are great at putting qubits and quantum states into equal superpositions, we have this equal superposition of all of the basis states. But they all have a phase of 0 because we haven't rotated any of them. But we could rectify that. We could maybe put a Z gate here on this, on the 3rd position, the bottom wire, which is the most significant qubit. Maybe put an S gate, which is a pi/2 rotation, a 90-degree rotation on the next wire. We'll put a T gate, which is a pi/4 radians rotation, which is a 45-degree rotation. And then I'm going to put another phase gate here. I'll put this phase gate here, and I'll do a pi/8 rotation, which is a 22.5-degree rotation. And so what we end up with then is a state in which all of the basis states are in equal superpositions, but they are in different phases. Here's a phase of 0, phase of pi/8, phase of pi/4, etc., all the way over here to a phase of 15 pi/8, just 22.5 degrees shy of a full circle. And it kind of looks like one of those toy xylophone. It's kind of nice looking there. And so the idea then is that we would play this state vector. So each one of these computational basis states we could think of as a 16th note, if you're familiar with musical terms, in a measure. And so sequentially, these would be played. And the fact that it's played is because it's got some amplitude to it, some probability. And what is going to be played is based upon the phase angle. So now I'll go over to the presentation, and we can see that the Quantum Music Playground has a user interface. This is actually a device that you'll see in the Ableton Live. We'll see it at the bottom here in just a couple of minutes. And in this device, we have a circuit builder, just kind of like we do here, only we can put gates here. Notice I've put the same gates. That Z1 just means it's a 1 pi/8 rotation. And notice here that all of these 16 positions here, these 16 steps in this sequence, the 16th notes, if you will, all of them are going to play. And instead of rendering them in some color and indicating what the phase is here, the way we're rendering it here is vertically. The bottom one is a 0 pi, 0 pi radians rotation. The next one is a 1 pi/8 rotation, etc., all the way up to 15 pi/8. And this vertically then, if I show you this next graphic, this vertically then is the rotation radians, and that controls then which of these pitches or instruments get played. That's kind of the theory and the mechanics behind it. There are some other things, musical kind of things and circuit related things over here that we'll explore as well. So now I'll go to the actual device itself. So here we are in Ableton Live. Here's the device down here. Here's our circuit. And I'll go ahead and play that circuit. This circuit here, I have associated with this particular clip in Ableton Live. As you notice, there are several instruments, several tracks, and then several clips within each track. And so this particular one plays a scale as we would expect. So then going back to the presentation, here's an example clip where we could play something musically. In this case, it's going to be a drum beat. And it's going to be one of the simplest drum beats there are. It's called the 4 on the floor pattern. It's for a kick drum or a bass drum. And essentially in a measure, here we've got 16th notes in one measure. And each one of these subdivisions here of 4, 16th note is a quarter note and would be one beat. And so this circuit with the 2 H gates, the fact that there are 4 wires in our quantum circuit says that there'll be 16 steps. And here we are putting the position 2 and position 3 wires in equal superpositions. So there's no possibility that these can get any amplitude or probability to play. And so the ones that are going to play are the ones that have their most significant bit or the next most significant bit, which is in position 2. And so those would be the ones that are in blue here. And so if I went back to the example, then I could play only that clip, which is this kick drum. I'll go ahead and solo that kick drum, and then we can. I'll go ahead and select that kick drum from the Quantum Music Playground. Notice that these things I'm selecting, these names here, map to all of the clips that are in Ableton. So I'm going to hit my kick drum, select my kick drum. We can see the circuit here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that T gate. And so now we have the same thing here that we saw in the slides. And if I play it, then we'll just hear a simple 4 on the floor pattern. Let me turn that up a little bit so you can hear it. And then just like before with the scale, I could put some rotation gates here. So here we're playing only the bass drum because I haven't rotated to play something else. But if I put, let's say, a T gate here on this wire, then that will rotate any of the basis states that are associated with that most significant qubit. So if I go back to the presentation, then here we see these basis states, and I put a T gate here, so that will affect anything that could have possibly played, which are these, but where there's a 1 in the most significant bit. Now, if we instead of putting the T gate there, we put it here on the 3rd wire, position 2 there, then we would see that the appropriate things change. And then we could play around with that if we wanted to maybe put another H gate down here. We could change our pattern. And so as we put gates down there, we could just kind of make a beat. And then, as I mentioned, we've got 4 wires here, but there are 8 total altogether. So I could explore that, and I could make this clip twice as long if I wanted to, by simply putting an H gate here, or any gate really. And then maybe I want to put a another kind of gate here so that we see the result here. And then we see that that anything where the most significant bit is 1, we're actually performing that rotation. Now here, let's go ahead and explore this area over to the left. I can use this hand icon and select one of the gates. I can click it, and then I can rotate. If it's a gate that you can rotate, then I can rotate that gate and kind of play with that rotation. That's a good way to kind of lose an afternoon just kind of playing with beats. It's pretty neat. But you can also see the effect. You can visualize then the state vector as you're playing with the quantum circuits and entertaining yourself and making music. So now we'll go back to the slides here. And in the first slide, I showed you a link to the tutorial, and so so here is the tutorial. It's in a GitHub repository, and it's the Quantum Music Playground tutorial. It's at version 0.95. I kind of want to release it and get people using it, and then I'll put some finishing touches on it. But it's really ready for students to use now. As a matter of fact, students are going at the new school in New York are going to use it for a quantum music jam. And so this is these are the instructions and the tutorial. This tutorial is based upon a couple of examples. One is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and there's lots of videos and things like that where it's showing you manipulating it and playing it, etc. I'm going to go ahead and do that live for you now. So here we are. I'll go ahead and just play the entire example of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I'm going to kick off this whole row here by clicking this one here. And then so you can hear different things that that we had, like the kick drum and the snare drum, etc. I'm going to go ahead and turn everything off except for the hi-hats. So you can hear that hi-hat pattern. I'm going to go ahead and bring the hi-hats up here. I'm going to go ahead and play with that a little bit here. I'm just going to take this control S gate or control S dagger gate off of there. And if you can hear that, you can hear the sound there. We just have a couple of closed highs followed by open hi-hats in this pattern. So I'll go ahead and stop that and go back to the presentation. And so what's causing that to happen then is we've got that circuit, as you saw, with the 4 Hadamards, and we've got the S gate, which is causing anything that has a 1 in the first position, the Q1 position, which is that second qubit, second least significant qubit. Anytime there's a 1 in that position, then it does that rotation. It's a phase rotation of 4 pi over 8 rotations, which is a pi over 2 rotation. And so that's why we see that. Again, over to the right, those are the radians in increments of 16 pi over 8. And so then that's why we hear this pattern. And we could play with that. We could do a control S here, and that will bring, or a control, actually I wanted to do a control S dagger here, and that'll bring it down to a closed position here. So you just can kind of play with that. So I guess I wanted to open it up for any questions that you have in a minute. I did want to mention that there are lots of examples in the tutorial. One of the things that I got pretty deeply involved with as I was creating this, kind of passionate about, one of my colleagues, Yuri, in Japan, got me really interested in Carnatic music. And so that's a form of Indian classical music. And so I devoted a fair bit of the tutorial to this idea of scales or ragas rather than Western scales. And so if you're interested in Carnatic music or really any kind of Indian classical music, then I would suggest that you also kind of look down in that area where we've got some different examples, and that's down here. I had to build a lot of things into Quantum Music Playground to support Carnatic music that ended up being very useful in Western music, like different time cycles and etc. And so that's down here. There's also the ability, as what you've noticed is this is very deterministic, right? You set up a state vector and then it plays it exactly how you want it to be played. But just as an example, if I wanted to play the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star melody in a stochastic way, then what I could do is go to the Twinkle A clip here, that clip that's playing that melody, which is this one, and I could hit this stochastic button. And what that will do is that'll play the same rhythm, but it will sample the probability distribution of the state and substitute that in each of the steps. And so I can hit stochastic. And that will take one measurement for each one of these steps that has any probability. And so if I hit stochastic again, it would play yet another pattern. There's also other functionality over here to the left, like this one is called quantize, and that plays notes together. There's one called velocity, which then will turn the volume. It will make the volume map to the probability, the actual probability of the state. So rather than just being it's going to play or not play, it'll respect the volume. So if I just soloed that one, you might be able to hear the volume differences. So here it gets quieter and softer and louder. But if I take velocity off, they'll all play at the same volume. By default, over here, it loops, as you can tell. But if I click one shot, then it's only going to make it play one time. So if I play this, then it'll only play one time. So you can control whether in your performance if you want to have it looping or just do it one shot. There's legato, which draws out your notes. So here we can play this. So that's legato. If I turn that off, then it's going to play everything in a non-legato, a non-drawn-out fashion. And you can do things like change your scales. You could go to a minor or even some type of a blues scale, pentatonic minor. You could transpose it, go to a different octave. As I mentioned, go from scales to ragas over here. If you say ragas, then it's going to show up ragas, and then you can pick among any one of the, I think, 72 Carnatic ragas. So anyway, I've thrown enough at you. I guess we better get to questions here, and let me address any questions that you might have. Let's see, going over to the chat. Okay, so I'll take the last question first here. Can this create bebop drum patterns in jazz? Robert. Yeah, definitely. You sure can. And that's the only question I have, I guess, unless anybody has any other questions. Okay, thank you. It's been my pleasure. And please reach out if you have any other questions or would like me to help you get started. Thanks.